The wind at the top of the mountain felt different that day. Not just colder, not just sharper, but heavier somehow, as if it carried something unsaid between us. I remember tightening my jacket and looking out over the edge. The world stretching endlessly below. Trees like tiny green whispers and the river carving its silver line through the valley. "It's beautiful," I said, more to fill the silence than anything else. My husband Daniel stood a few steps behind me. I could feel his presence without turning around. For years, that feeling had been comforting. That day it felt uncertain. "You always liked heights," he said. His voice was flat. Not cold exactly, but missing something warm I had once relied on. I turned to him and smiled, trying to pull him back into the moment we were supposed to be sharing. "You used to hate them. Remember our first hike? You wouldn't even come near the edge." He didn't smile back. "I remember," he said. There was a pause long enough for the wind to whistle between us like a warning. We had been married for 8 years. 8 years of shared breakfasts, quiet arguments, long drives, and nights where we fell asleep facing opposite walls without saying why. Somewhere along the way, the love hadn't disappeared, but it had changed shape into something quieter, heavier. I thought this trip was meant to fix that. A weekend away, no phones, no distractions, just us. That's what he had said. "Come closer," I told him, gesturing toward the view. "You don't get scared anymore, right?" He walked toward me slowly. Each step felt deliberate, like he was measuring something invisible between us. "I'm not scared," he said. I laughed softly. "Good, because I want a picture. Come stand next to me." I turned slightly, lifting my phone, angling it so the cliff and the horizon framed us perfectly. For a second, everything felt almost normal again. The kind of normal you hold on to because you don't know it's about to disappear. "Ready?" I asked. He didn't answer. Instead, I felt his hands on my back. At first, it didn't register as anything unusual, just the familiar touch of someone I trusted, someone I loved. And then he pushed. It wasn't violent. It wasn't dramatic. It was firm, certain, and final. The ground disappeared beneath my feet before my mind could catch up. There are moments in life that stretch into eternity. Falling is one of them. I remember the sky spinning, the wind roaring louder than any scream I tried to make. I remember thinking this couldn't be real, that this was some terrible mistake, that he would reach out, grab me, pull me back. But there was no hand. Only air. And then darkness. When I woke up, the world was quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that feels like it's waiting for you to realize something is terribly wrong. My body hurt in ways I didn't have words for. Every breath felt like glass. I tried to move, and pain shot through me so sharply I gasped. I was lying on a narrow ledge partway down the cliff. Above me, the sky was a distant blue strip. Below me, nothing but a drop into shadow. I was alive. The thought didn't bring relief. It brought confusion. Why? I closed my eyes, trying to remember, and then it came back in pieces. The mountain. The silence, the push. Daniel. My chest tightened, and this time it wasn't from the pain. He had pushed me. Not slipped. Not stumbled. Pushed. A sound escaped my throat, something between a sob and a laugh. It didn't make sense.
People didn't do that.
Husbands didn't do that. Not without a reason. Not without something leading up to it. Had I missed something? The questions came faster than the answers. Time blurred after that. I don't know how long I stayed on that ledge, drifting in and out of consciousness. The sun moved. The air grew colder. At some point I heard voices. Faint at first, then closer. "Down there!" A man's voice, urgent. Shapes appeared above me. Silhouettes against the sky, ropes, movement, hands reaching. "Stay with us," someone said as they secured me. "You're going to be okay." I wanted to tell them I wasn't sure I wanted to be, but I didn't have the strength. The next clear memory I have is the hospital. Bright lights, the steady beep of machines, the sterile smell that clung to everything. I opened my eyes slowly, my body heavy and unfamiliar. A nurse noticed immediately. "Hey, you're awake," she said gently. "You gave us quite a scare." My voice came out as a whisper. "How long?" 3 days, she said. "You're lucky. Very lucky. Lucky." The word felt strange. "Your husband's been here," she added. He stepped out to talk to the doctor. "Do you want me to call him?" My heart started pounding, faster than it had any right to. He was here. Of course he was here. Where else would he be? "Okay," I said, though I wasn't sure it was. She nodded and left. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. Maybe it was an accident. Maybe I had misunderstood. Maybe. The door opened. I turned my head slowly. Daniel stood there, his face pale, his eyes red like he hadn't slept. For a moment, he just looked at me. Then he rushed forward, grabbing my hand. "Oh my God," he said, his voice breaking. "You're awake. I thought I lost you." His grip tightened, his hands trembling. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I should have been closer. I should have—" "Why?" I asked. The word cut through everything. He froze. "What?" he said. "Why did you push me?" My voice was still weak, but the question was stronger than anything else in the room. He stared at me like I had said something impossible. "I didn't push you," he said quickly. "You slipped. You got too close to the edge and—" "Don't," I said. The look in his eyes shifted. Just for a second. Fear. Not for me. For himself. "I remember," I said, each word deliberate. "Your hands. The way you did it." Silence filled the space between us, heavy and suffocating. Then something I never expected happened. He smiled. Not the smile I knew. Not warm, not familiar. Something colder. "You weren't supposed to remember that," he said quietly. The room seemed to tilt. My chest tightened, my breath catching. "What?" I whispered. He glanced at the door, then back at me. "I thought the fall would take care of everything," he said. Clean, simple, tragic accident. Grieving husband. No questions. My heart pounded so loudly I thought it might give me away. "Why?" I asked again, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. He sighed like I was asking something inconvenient. "Because I needed you out of the way," he said. "The insurance, the house, everything was tied up with you, and I couldn't wait anymore." The words didn't feel real. This man, the one who had shared my life, my bed, my memories, he was talking about me like I was an obstacle. "You're lying," I said, but it sounded weak even to me. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "No one is going to believe you," he said. "You fell. That's what everyone thinks. That's what I told them." My fingers curled slightly in the sheets. "You should have stayed dead," he added softly. Something inside me shifted then. Not fear, not sadness. Something harder, stronger. "Get out," I said. He blinked, surprised. "What?" "Get out," I repeated louder this time. "Now." For a moment I thought he might refuse. Then he straightened, his expression smoothing over like none of this had happened. "You're confused," he said. "You need rest." And then he walked out. The door closed behind him with a quiet click. I stared at it for a long time. Long enough for the shock to settle into something clearer. He had tried to kill me, and he thought he had gotten away with it. What he didn't know was that I had something he hadn't planned for. I had survived. The days that followed were a blur of recovery and quiet planning. I told the police everything. At first, there were doubts. Of course there were. My injuries, the fall, his story, it all lined up too neatly. But truth has a way of finding its cracks. A hiker had been farther up the trail that day. Far enough to see. Not clearly. Not enough to stop it, but enough to notice something wasn't right. Enough to question. And questions lead to answers. By the time I left the hospital, Daniel was already under investigation. By the time I stood on my own again, he was in custody. The trial came months later. I sat in that courtroom, my body still healing. My heart scarred in ways no one could see, and I watched him. He avoided my eyes at first. Then once he looked up. There was no remorse there. Only the same cold calculation I had seen in that hospital room. It didn't break me. It freed me. When the verdict came, I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief in the way I expected. What I felt was something quieter, closure. Later I went back to the mountain. Not to relive it, but to reclaim it. I stood at the edge again, the wind brushing against my face. The world stretching out below just as it had before. Only this time I wasn't afraid. Because I had already fallen. And I had come back. Stronger. And no one would ever push me again.